Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Hinshaw. I'm the current chairman of PFI. I apologize for not being able to be there tonight. I want to take a minute and say a couple words about George. So many of you may or may not know Smitty Belcher and George Stuller were longtime friends. I guess they met in the industry back in Toledo, Ohio. We're both pipe fitters, welders. We're heavy into working out and wrestling and boxing, and I wouldn't have got between the two of them. But they're longtime friends. When Smitty Belcher and the Charles Brandon and Jim Gathen merged their companies, they hired George to do some consulting. So he came out to our organization. We had bought a new accounting software. George had to learn the accounting software and then teach it to every one of our associates. We used to run $20 million projects, only keeping track of labor, material, equipment, and subs. We thought that's not a good way to run the business. So George came out, was with our company for weeks, teaching classrooms of 5 to 7 people. And it's the first time I had met George. Really smart guy. Again, had to learn the accounting software himself and then teach it to every one of our associates. Time went by. George would come out occasionally and consult on the set up our fabrication shop. And again, the more I learned and got to know George, the more I realized what a smart guy he was. I ran a large project as a senior project manager for P1 Group, multi-millions and a very aggressive schedule. And Smitty asked George to come out again. And by this time I'd gotten to know George pretty good, and we had some deep philosophical conversations about the industry and about how the job was going. Always enjoyed my time with him. I was asked to become a member of PFI in 2013. So my first meeting was the 100-year anniversary in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Didn't know much about the industry at all. I just was asked to start attending. It's when I showed up that I realized just sort of the command that George had of the industry and the respect that he commanded in both the UA and in the PFI. They'd accomplished a lot. I think 2013 was the year that we got the freedom of movement of comfort heating and cooling and plumbing around the United States, and I tip my hat to the PFI and the UA for accomplishing that. I think it's been huge for our industry. But it's interesting to sit in those meetings. If you knew George, kind of a short man of stature. It seems like in all the meetings somebody threw out a short joke about George. But he was really kind of one of the biggest guys in the room. When George talked, everybody listened. I learned a lot from the guy. It was always a pleasure to, I think that was the first time I met Sue, is in Pittsburgh in 2013. And it was a pleasure to meet her and just watching the two of them interact and spend time together. George will certainly be missed by all of us. There's probably not a day goes by. I think during COVID, all of us had our own things that we were dealing with, and the world was kind of on its ear. And so this happening was just shocking to everybody. But, the effects, we had meetings that were canceled because of COVID, and then when we got back together, that place will always be missing in the room. And I don't remember who it was that brought it up, whether it was somebody from the UA or somebody from PFI said, we should do something in honor of George. And everybody unanimously said, absolutely, we need to do something in honor of George. I'm going to just read briefly from what went out to various business managers across the country and all the PFI membership. The UA and the Pipe Fabrication Institute are pleased to announce the creation of the annual George Stuller Award. George Stuller was the epitome of a true industry leader. His dedication to the fabrication industry never went unnoticed. He was a member of PFI for 20 years and served as chairman and labor committee chairman. George worked for various contractors until his retirement, and after retirement he created a successful consulting business. With his vast experience in the fabrication field, George consulted on successfully setting up and running fabrication facilities. Additionally, he lectured for the MCAA and the Pipe Fabrication Institute. He was considered an expert in the field and authored many prefabrication operation guides for plumbing. George was a proud 54-year member of Local 50 in Toledo, Ohio, and an instructor. Every day he demonstrated the value of a strong relationship between labor and management to advance the pipe fabrication industry. So we created this award, and it was unanimous that we wanted to pick people that captured George's ideals. Again, just a great guy. In life, there's these bracelets that were made up that said, "What would Jesus do?" And I find myself professionally asking, "What would George do?" Because he's just such a big influence on this industry. The reason I'm not there is because my daughter's receiving an award this evening. And again, what would George do? You know, there was a study that was done by FMI, and a few of us were asked to serve as a part of that study. So I got to spend a lot of time with George working on that study. The screensaver on his computer is a picture of his family outside of Cedar Point Park in Sandusky, Ohio. And I saw that picture one time. I said, "Man, is that the whole clan?" He said, "Yep." And he says, "I take them all to Cedar Point Park, and I ride every roller coaster with them." I've been to Cedar Point Park, and I said, "Every roller coaster?" And he said, "Every roller coaster." There's a few I wouldn't get on. Anyway, George will forever be missed. I'm going to turn this over to Chris here in a minute. I thought it'd be appropriate if we share a toast in honor of George, and I thought we'd use his preferred drink. So I give you all the Shirley Temple. Here's to George.